Hi, I'm Creston. Welcome to the SQL Where Clause. First, we're going to go over some slides, and then we're going to get into some live coding. If you want to follow along with the live coding, be sure to visit the link in the description below. All right, let's get started with the SQL Where Clause. So a SQL Where Clause allows you to filter the rows a SQL statement affects. So for example, in a select statement, it filters the rows returned. It can support one or more conditions that are combined using an AND or an OR. It's not only used by the select statement, but also the update and delete statements as well, so it helps define what rows get updated and deleted. So here's an example using the where clause. I'm selecting all the columns from the products table where the color, which is a column on the table, equals blue. All right, let's jump into some live examples. All right, we're back in Ubuntu, and I have connected to the Postgres user, and I'm using the PSQL command line client to connect to the test database we created earlier. Now, the next step is I'm going to create the post table again. If you already have a post table and you're following along, you can go ahead and drop that post table with drop table posts. But again, be very careful. Make sure you're only doing it in a test database. So I'm going to recreate this table that we used previously that includes the unique ID, the title of the post, the content of the post, as well as when it was published at. Now I'm going to go ahead and insert 3 rows of data. So that it has a unique ID, again, the title of each post, the content, and when it was published at. One is using a text string to insert it, and the other the now function of Postgres. You may need to use your own database-specific function if you're wanting to do that, or you may have to use a particular string to insert it into your database. Okay, so now that we have that data in there, let's go ahead and select all. So it should look like this. This is all of our columns from our post table. So let's first check equality. So you want to filter the rows by a where clause. So I'm saying where the title is equal to this exact title, Intro to SQL. So it's going to pull up that one record. Now, in this case, I'm searching essentially a string column, or it's a character variant or a text column. You can use this type of string syntax to identify it. ID is an integer. For doing that, you can simply do ID equals, say, 101, and it's going to pull ID 101. Now you can also check for inequality. So for example, I'm going to look to search where the ID does not equal 101. And it's going to give me all the rows from the table except where the ID equals 101. You can also, it varies between databases, so you can also potentially use this as a not syntax. It'll give you the same result. It basically means not equal. You could also use not. So you could say ID equals this, but use a not. So where it's not equal to ID equals 101, then that gives you the same result. So that's a way to test inequality. You can also use in to specify multiple values. So I'm saying, give me all the posts where the ID is in this particular list. So 100, 101. And again, it's going to pull that list of IDs that I specified. In addition to equality, you can do greater than equal to, less than or equal to. So give me all the IDs where the post is greater than 101. So we just get the one record, which is 102, because that's greater than 101. Or you could always do equal to, and it's going to give you where it's 101 and 102. Now let's talk a little bit about nulls. So nulls is where A null is where you do not know what the value is. It's not necessarily blank, but it's an unknown value. So when you're going to check for that, you're going to be using a different syntax in the where clause. So let's first take a look. Let's using a where clause where the published at is greater than or equal to the 15th of January. So we're only going to get the one post. Now, just as a reminder, when we look at all the posts, so we have one published at where it's null and one where it's on the 1st of January and then the 2nd of February. So we only get one post that's greater than January the 15th in terms of the published at. Now, if we do less than this date, it's only going to give us the one record. So basically, it is when you're using a where in this manner, where it's greater than, equal to, or less than, it's not going to pull out the nulls. So how do you identify the nulls? So you can do a statement where published at is null, and it's going to pull out those nulls for you. Similarly, you can do is not null, and it's going to give you everywhere where a published at date exists and it's not null. Or you could use a syntax where you say where not published at is null, and it gives you the same answer. Okay, so up above here we looked at matching on the title where it's exactly equal to what is in there. You can also do a pattern search in terms of text strings. So you can use this % symbol, which is essentially like a wildcard. So it's going to search for anything before or after. It could be anything, but somewhere in the middle there's pi. So if we search for it where the content is like pi, we can say, aha, we pull out this content where it says easy as pie. Now this is case sensitive, so if I do pi, it's not going to return any records. However, Postgres has a command you can use called ilike that does a case insensitive search. So if I run that, it's going to pull up the right record. Now other databases don't have ilike, or they may not have ilike, but they have other functions you can use, like to force either the input to be all uppercase or force the content to be all uppercase or lowercase, so you can do a case matching without regard to the case. Okay, so let's look at where you can combine these where clauses using and or. So this statement, I'm looking for all the posts where the ID is equal to 100 and the title is like SQL. Now, of course, because we're looking at the ID equals 100, we're only going to get the one row. You can also use an or clause. So for example, I can look where the ID equals 100 or the published stat is null. So when we run this, we actually get two rows. We get the original row we got up here because it's 100, and or we get it where the published stat is null. So it returns those two rows because it finds the conditions where either or is true. Now another use case for the and or frequent use case is if you're wanting to do a date range. So we're looking where the published stat date is greater than equal to this date or less than this date. So with this particular time range, we just pull the one record that is between these two dates. There's also a special operator you can use called between. So it looks for an inclusive search between two values. So for example, I'm looking at an ID where it's between 100 and 101, and it includes these. So we should get the two rows. We get 100 and 101. Now I generally like to use greater than, equal, or less than with date time fields as opposed to using between, but you just need to make sure you get accurate records when you do that. I hope that was helpful. If you want to learn more, you can check out my free course called SQL Bootcamp. There's a link in the description below this video.